Hello, everybody, and welcome to Godcast, the Goodness Over Darkness podcast, episode 3. This is going to be titled Bread and Circus. So it's pretty much going to be about entertainment and distractions. And you'll get a feel for the type of person that I was, what my influences were, uh, the types of interests that I had. I want to lighten it up a little bit after episode two. Episode two was a little deep. I went a little bit deeper than I was expecting to. Not that it's bad or anything, but it was tough. So, I know I had some audio issues with that episode. So I'm trying something new. So if you're watching the video, you might see uh, two different screens. I don't know what it looks like on the recording right now, but that's because I'm using two different things to make sure that the audio is still going through to see if it was my microphone cutting out or maybe it was just Zoom muting me. So uh, I'm listening in from another account that I have so that I can see if it's still going through the microphone. All right. Well, I think I should pretty much get into episode 3 then. So, I was the biggest sports fan you could ever imagine. I knew every player on every team, every coach, every GM. I knew all the draft boards. I knew all the fantasy leagues. I played Madden, NBA 2K, everything. Sports was my life. I growing up, I played sports all the time. That's what my friends and I did when I was a child. Before uh, before my addiction took hold of me. Up until like 17 and 18, I was still playing sports, and I'm athletic now. But there was a time after sports where I got really heavy during my addiction. I was 280 pounds when I got weighed when I was a truck driver. I was about to leave. So we're at my going away party, and my cousin bet my brother that I was over like, I think it was 250. And my brother was like, nah, he's not over 250. And I was 276 or 274, something like that. Yeah, that's just a side story. But back to, how it was all about sports. And that's how my father and I connected more than on any other subject or topic or anything else ever. It was sports. We always had sports that we could go to and have a conversation about, a deep conversation. And that was just our main bonding mechanism, I'd say. He was a, the greatest baseball coach you could have. I mean, everyone probably thinks that their dad is great and all that, but seriously, I think my dad could have easily been coaching in the minors, if not the majors, if he dedicated his life. He knows baseball better than anybody I've ever come across. So having him as my coach, it was cool. I mean, he didn't give me favorites, but I was I'm not being conceited, but I was always one of the best. I always played up 2 to 3 years even. I was like 10 playing with like 13-year olds, 11 playing with 14-year olds, something like that. And I was one of the best on the team as 3 years younger than everybody else. And I was a top notch pitcher. I could throw, I think it was like 73 I hit when I was 14. I had pitching coach. I had a really nasty curveball. I had a promising high school career in baseball, and possibly, further than that. Could have seen what college would have brought, and the minors or majors, whatever. But all that never reached its potential because of all my bad decisions that led me away from those possibilities. But yeah, that was how my dad and I bonded. We always talked about sports. Growing up, I wasn't an Eagles fan. I don't know why, but like all my brothers were fans of other places. We were from Philly, and my dad was a huge Eagles fan. He used to have season tickets, and he remembers like every single moment that's ever happened in Philadelphia Eagle history. One of those type of dedicated fans. But he never made his sons be Eagles fans. My older brother, was a Miami Dolphins fan, still is. My oldest brother, he was an Eagles fan. He's always been an Eagles fan. Uh, my younger brother, I only have one of those. He wasn't really ever into football, but I always remembered he liked the Detroit Lions. But he didn't really like anything until he got a little bit older. Now he's kind of into it, I guess. And he's an Eagles fan. And I became an Eagles fan before they won the Super Bowl. It was because I was released from prison, and it was just the way I got treated. I'll get more into that in the next episode when I talk about jail a little bit. But basically, the western half of the state hated Philadelphia and Pennsylvania. They do. Philadelphia is very different than the rest of Pennsylvania. So they all talk shit about the Eagles and all Philly sports teams nonstop, to the point that it made me become an Eagles fan because I grew up a 49ers fan. And I guess because they were so good, I remember the first game I watched, my dad was helping me make a soapbox derby, and one of those little cars for Boy Scouts. And we made one, and it was during the 20 catch performance by Terrell Owens when the 49ers beat the Packers in the playoffs. And he caught the 20th pass right in between like a linebacker and a safety, right on the goal line from Steve Young. It was a really good game. I had a friend over actually when that was going down. But that's my first memory of being a 49ers fan. I always watched football when my dad and my older brothers would watch it on Monday nights and Sunday nights. I would have a little football like this big, a foot big, not even 6 inches maybe, that I would just toss up to myself, and I would dive around the living room catching the ball. And I specifically remember doing it for the Houston Oilers versus the Pittsburgh Steelers when I was about 5 years old. That was the first time I did it. See, I just said my first memory of the 49ers fan was probably when I was like 9. But my oldest brother got me a Jerry Rice jersey when I was like 3 years old. Maybe I was a little bit, maybe I was like 5. But it was something like that. And it was because I used to throw the football up and dive around, and I would pretend I was Jerry Rice diving to catch the ball. But I only remember doing it that one time, but I guess I did it all the time. So that was a good time. Uh, but then I became the Eagles fan, and then they won the Super Bowl, and that was awesome. Yeah, I got them tattooed. If you got the video on, I'll show it. Eagles tattoo, Super Bowl. It was pretty sweet. That year, the Eagles Philadelphia held the draft at the beginning of the season, and then the Eagles won the Super Bowl. So they had the parade. So they had the very first event and the very last event. It was such a magical year. And it was the year right after I got out of jail. And my daughter's grandfather, not my dad, her mom's dad, he went to jail. And my buddy, so we were like best friends growing up, and he was always an Eagles fan. And they would be tormented because that's what Philadelphia sports do. But he died just before that season, and we weren't friends anymore by the time he died. I'll get more into that in the next episode. Uh, but like I said, I wanted to keep it lighter. But it was, even though we weren't friends, I would think of him every time the Eagles won, and I was like, "Huh, it's because he died. Now they're going to win." Not that that's what I thought, but it's like that's just his luck, that type of thing. Yeah, that was a big thing for the whole city. It let out a lot of emotion, and it went along with my awakening. It was a very very cool year. A lot of things happened for me, and it was very symbolic of the Eagles, the small nobodies with all these injured players going up against the machine that was the New England Patriots and Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. And Nick Foles, a backup quarterback who was about to quit football, won. He won the Super Bowl. Oh, shoot. I don't have this light on. So it's kind of dark if I'm recording or if you're watching the video, but oh well. Back to what I was saying. It was really cool that that happened because Carson Wentz was looking to be the MVP of the year, and then he got hurt, and everybody's just like, of course, it's Philadelphia. That's what's going to happen. And then they wrote that underdog story all the way to Super Bowl champions. Now, you could say all sports are fake, which I totally agree with. But for whatever reason, they let Philadelphia win, or God made Philadelphia win, and they couldn't stop it. One of those two things happens. But it was such a good release of positive energy. It helped my awakening so much. It made me a more positive person. I could feel the energy in the city because I worked in the city a lot as a driver. And you go around to places, and when people are excited about the Eagles, I mean, Philadelphia loves their Eagles like no other city. Philadelphia is tied to the Philadelphia Eagles more than any other city is tied to any other sports team or any entertainment of any way. I mean, they live and die by the Eagles, and I used to, for a time. Well, there was the Eagles or maybe another team. But, I was a huge 76ers fan. We can, transition from, so the football year, I mean, that was amazing. And I have it tattooed on me, and I only have two tattoos. I mean, you could say it was a waste, but it was very significant to me, and that's that's what I chose to more memorialize on my body. So then the Sixers. Now the Sixers, my daughter and I had a special relationship with the Sixers, and my older brother, because again, my older brother was a Miami Heat fan. So for whatever reason, he likes the Miami Dolphins and the Miami Heat, and the Well, now they're the Florida Marlins, but they were the Miami Marlins, or maybe it's vice versa, whatever. They play in Miami. So for whatever reason, he always chose Miami as his sports teams. But then when the Sixers got good with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, then he started becoming a fan of them. I guess, similar to how I became a fan of the Eagles, except the Eagles weren't good when I became a fan. But whatever. So him and I talk basketball all the time. We'd be texting each other, debating, arguing about this and that, all the trades, who's doing what, all the nonsense that goes on. And my daughter and I would watch a lot of games together, but she would have to go to bed when they were playing. But for the playoffs, I let her stay out. We went to game 6 of the Eastern Conference Finals when against the Toronto Raptors. They won that game, but then they went to game 7 and lost. That was the game where the ball hit the rim 4 different times by Kawhi Leonard and went in at the buzzer. That buzzer beater hit the rim 4 different places and went in and dropped, and they won. If they missed it, I think they were tied. But either way, he made it. But we got to go to the game before because tickets were really cheap. They were down 3-1. So a lot of people sold their tickets and they're like, oh, they're done for. And then, so I ended up getting tickets and then they won that game. But then, they didn't win in game 7. But it was a really, really good time. We got some nice shirts and there were empty seats around us. So I grabbed up another shirt. But now I only have one of those shirts. I don't know how we went from 3 to 1. It was a Moses Malone shirt. It was really cool. So yeah, her and I, we even got my sister-in-law was making clothes and all sorts of stuff back last year and a half ago, and she made us basketball shirts, custom 76ers ones, and they're awesome. And we wore that to the playoff game. It has a front and the back. It has their little song, so it's really cool. Yeah, so her and I, that was a special thing for us. Just I guess the way that sports in general was with me and my dad, it kind of was how I knew how to connect with my daughter. Because I had experience as a son connecting with my father about those things, sports and those topics. So I already had the experience. So then I figured that would be a good thing. And it was. I coached her in basketball, I coached her in softball, but I became way too hard on her. And I was expecting way too much because of how good she was and how talented she is. She is amazing. And when she would mess up, I was expecting her to be amazing. So when she messed up, I would be like really hard on her, overly hard, way too hard. And it ruined our relationship a little bit. She started to not like me because we were always together because I was her softball coach and we had softball for a lot of softball, 3 times a week, maybe even up to like 4 or 5 times a week with tournaments. And it was just too much. And I put way too much pressure on her. Not that she didn't love it, she did, but I guess I kind of ruined it for her. At least for now, we took a break from it. She wasn't too interested in playing this year as we just moved to Georgia, so maybe next year she'll get back into it. But it was a source of content, and God took all those sources away from me, or is adjusting them and having me learn how to use them in a new and better way. So back to baseball. Now the Phillies, they won the World Series in '08, and then they got a little bit worse the next 4 years. They should have won. Now, I'm not trying to make this a sports episode, but just how I was and my mindset. Everything was sports. So when the Phillies won the World Series, when the Eagles won the Super Bowl, when the Sixers are in the Eastern Conference Finals, these are big moments of my life. Very big. Bigger than they should have been. I'll tell you that. I made them more important than they were to someone who had so much going wrong in his life, and he's paying attention to all these distractions, because that's what this all is. That's what Hello? Okay, it's back. All right, so I don't know if the audio actually cut out, but I couldn't hear myself in the other headphones, so I didn't continue the story. So I'll just keep going now. So the Phillies winning the World Series was big to me. It was '08, and then '09. So that's when I graduated high school. And then '09, they lost the World Series. And then 2010, they lost the National League Championship Series. And then 2011, they lost the National League Divisional Series. And they had set all these regular season records for pitching and wins and all sorts of stuff. I mean, they were locked in that last year, and they lost in the first round of the playoffs. That was probably their best team, and it took what, I don't know, some luck, or maybe, if it's all set up, you know, it was just to mess with everybody. They let them win when they're not expected, and when they're expected, then they shit the bed. Yeah, so these moments, I mean, you talk about bread and circus. If you don't know what bread and circus is, that's what Rome, when they would have the Colosseum and they would have the gladiators, that's what they called it, bread and circus, because they'd feed you and they entertain you, they distract you. And bring it back into a spiritual sense, is they're distracting you from God. It's scientifically impossible to have two thoughts at the same time. So you can either be thinking about God, or you can be distracted from thinking about God. That's the only two things that are going on. Now you can reword it any number of ways, and you can say, but this and but that. But no matter how you boil it down, you're either thinking about God or you're not. And when you're not, you're distracted from God. And when you're being purposely distracted from God with meaningless games, it hurts your feelings. And when you're not only, I don't want to say only, but when your biggest bonding tool with your father is something that you now know is just the biggest distraction of all, it's like, what do we talk about? We formed our whole lifetime, my lifetime, relationship around this one thing that I have no interest in anymore. I talked to him about it, or I let him tell me about it. which is interesting. And he still knows a ton. I don't want his feelings to get hurt if he hears this, but I don't care about sports at all. It's cool for kids and it's good to have disciplines and it's good to exercise and it's good to have competition. There's all sorts of good things you get from sports as a kid and a teenager. I'll have to cut out again. Uh, hello, hello. It's cutting me out. I don't know if it's recording or not. Hello? Okay. So I was having some kind of technical difficulty. I don't know if Zoom keeps messing with me, but my microphone just keeps going out for no reason. So please bear with me as I try to get this worked out. All right, so back to what I was saying. I don't know what our relationship could be about because I realized that I didn't have, I went away from God because I was never taught about God, really. That's a understanding that I've come to recently. And there's a study that I forget exactly what it is, but men who don't feel the love from their fathers are more prone to be atheists. I forget the exact statistics I was just talking about, but they're more prone to turn away from God. So if you don't have the father figure that is uh, loving and warm and teaching you about God, then you're more prone to become an atheist, to not believe in that because you weren't raised by that. And then I became atheist. I mean, I'm not saying that it's my dad's fault, of course not. But we didn't have, and that's because he probably didn't have one. Him and his father had an estranged relationship. And that's where you have the generational trauma come in. So, you take a child and that child grows up without love. Well, then that child becomes a parent and has a child, and that new parent is giving the child more love than it got, but it's still not giving all that much. So then the new child becomes an adult and has a child and gives more than he got, and but it's still not all that much, but it's more. So from the perspective, it's like, oh well, you have it good because I had all these bad things happen to, we don't take into account as parents that we've done all these other different bad things to our children. So where you might be traumatized from your parent in one regard with cleaning, with how with a maybe a strict parent on cleaning. So, as a parent, you make it a note to not be strict about cleaning. So then when your child's complaining, you're like, but my mom used to treat me like this when I didn't clean. And it's like, yeah, but you traumatized me about sports. And then it's like, oh, the trauma is just getting moved around into different things. It's never actually being healed. It's just disguised and it's not being talked about. It's the elephant in the room. So what I was saying was that I didn't have God. So you can either think about God or you can be distracted. Well, I never had a thought about God because I was distracted. My entire life growing up, I was never told about God. I went to Sunday school, but they just told us stories about humans. It had nothing to do with God. And it's unfortunate that that's how Christianity operates because they're not teaching anyone anything. They're trying to give these kids flowery stories to keep them entertained rather than teach them the true nature of themselves and life. So to me, God didn't exist because they made it out to be that it was some man judging me somewhere. That's how I interpreted it. Whether someone or anyone meant to form that opinion or have me form that opinion, influence me in any way to form that opinion. That's the opinion that I came to. So my dad and I, we talk now once every 3 weeks or so. When I work on Saturdays, I call because I've been calling my mom like every other day that I work, almost every other day. But I just let him talk about sports, and then I try telling him what I have going on around the house. And it's even when I try talking to my mom, what the things I want to talk about is God and helping them understand how to heal themselves, that their physical issues are stemming from their mental and emotional and spiritual wounds and traumas that they aren't healing. And it's tough because they have their mind on distractions. They're in the bread and circus, and let's get into music because that's bread and circus just as much as sports are. They're distracting you. They're telling you to, well, they're not telling you to do these things, but you're telling yourself by playing the songs that these things are okay. And then you're singing along with the words and you're telling yourself these things are more than okay. They're normal and that they're things that you actually want. And you want to talk to people in a threatening way and you want to come off as the most badass person there is. And you want all of these things. You want money and a house and whatever. And you treat women awfully. I mean, just they talk about rape and murder so regularly in rap. It normalizes it. So all the young kids listening to that think that's normal behavior. They grow up in a world where someone else has never heard that and was taught about God as a child. And they're going to grow up two very different people. I mean, it's just common sense. You have these terrible influences on younger and younger children. And cool, they want to do entertainment. I mean, that's for anyone to decide what they get entertained by. But just know that when you participate in those types of things, you invite in things that you don't want in your life. You're just not understanding that your words have power, that your thoughts have energy, that you tell yourself something over and over by memorizing the words, that you normalize those behaviors and you accept them as okay. And then your morals are all over the place because you're allowing such horrible material to enter into your mind. I mean, Eminem, Lil Wayne, Jay Z, Biggie, Tupac, Nas, the list goes on and on. All of those, 50 Cent, G Unit, The Game, all of them. Young Jeezy, Meek Mill. The more gangster the rap, the more I was into it. It had to have good lyrics, and I didn't uh, care too much about hook or the sound, the music to it. I just like the lyrics, the tongue twisters. But there's so many good rappers that aren't talking about awful things, but they don't get played. And especially if they talk about Jesus, they don't get played. When you start bringing up Jesus Christ, mainstream wants to turn you off. There's a reason for that. And if you haven't found out yet, you'll find out sometime. It's because the people running the bread and circus are the enemies of Christ. And I'm not religious, I'm not a Christian. I just told you how I don't like Christianity. But those perpetrating, those who are pumping out this entertainment, these distractions, as if we should worship them, because that's what happens. You wear men's names on your back and you're singing these awful things. It's just all so much. You're worshiping, you're idolizing these people. You're going to their concerts, you're dressing like them, you're talking like them, you're being influenced by them, whether you're actively doing it or you're subconsciously doing it. You're giving these people worship. I'm not putting you down for that. I was worse than anyone listening. I'm not judging you. It's just, it is what it is. And it's hard to look at the truth in the face. So if you're listening to this, don't be projecting onto me. I'm not projecting onto you. I am telling you that I was worshiping and idolizing. I'm using these terms because they were things that I did that I see happening for the most part with life in general. It's what we see in our pop culture. It's a reflection of what's going on. And Cardi B's WAP being the number one song of the year, that's all you need to know. That's where pop culture is. Maybe that's not even real. Maybe all the times when they put out the top 10 songs and they say this many people listened, maybe it's all lies. Maybe they made it up. Maybe that's the top 10 that they wanted up there for whatever reason. I don't know. Why should I trust them? Those people, who are they to me? What biases do they have? What are they being influenced by? Is a record company paying them extra? You know, corruption comes in all forms. But I do know that anyone that talks about Jesus Christ gets censored. You got to listen Hello? Okay, I'm back. Zoom cut me off again. Mention Jesus Christ. So, these rappers, KB, Lecrae, these guys are so amazing. And they're talking about God. It's back to the bread and circus. Okay, they are entertainment. I entertain myself. But I'm not choosing to do it with filth. I'm not judging you for what you do. I don't even know who you are, whoever's listening to this. Okay. I consider what I used to listen to filth now. So I choose not to listen to that. And I choose to listen to music that praises God. I'm not better than you because I switched. Okay. I just switched because I understood what was going on to me on a psychological level. I understood how I was being influenced, and it may have come in a strange form, but I understood it. And now I can see how it's happening to so many different people. I mean, that's the bread and circus. I talked on Alex Coleman's show, Recovering Thought Addict. Last week, I was on there. I think it's episode 5. You should check it out. It's a really good episode. Alex is a really good podcaster. He knows his stuff. His podcast may be new, but he's good. So I was on there and I was telling him how my music went along with my spiritual awakening. And I'll leave that as it is. So if you want to talk, excuse me, if you want to hear me talk about that in detail, I suggest you go over to Alex Coleman's Recovering Thought Addict, and you can get that same places, Spotify, YouTube, wherever, and you go listen to that conversation because it's, I understood music to be like the soundtrack of my life. And as I spiritually grew, my musical interests changed, and I could see the reflection of that being the background music of my life. So it's pretty amazing. At one point I stopped listening to all the stuff I listened to, and I only listened to Kanye West Jesus is King album for like 2 or 3 months. Either that or healing frequencies like 528 hertz, 963 hertz, 417 hertz, all that. I'll have to. Okay, it's back. I'll have to see why my microphone keeps cutting off on me. But yeah, I was listening to all those healing frequencies or Jesus is King for like 2 or 3 months. And then Jesus is Born came out, and that's by the Sunday Service Choir, which is the backup singers for Jesus is King. And then from there, I've grown into liking a bunch of different rappers and, I guess Christian rock or Christian worship. I have a bunch of it on my Facebook. and it just keeps on cutting out. This is ridiculous. So, anyway, there's a bunch of the music on my Facebook. These guys are really good. I mean, the group's name is 116. Got this guy 1K Few. You got Andy Mineo, Tadashi, KB Lecrae. Hello, man. Hello. The recording shouldn't be affected by my internet. I don't think. Hello, hello, hello. All right, I'm finally back. All right, so yeah, you got KB Lecrae. Hello. So you got KB Lecrae, Holvey. I'm sorry for all these audio issues. I don't know what's going on, but I keep having all of these issues popping up. Maybe it's my internet. I don't know. Yeah, so I'll just leave the music for that episode with Alex if you guys want to hear more about that. Let's see what else I got in my notes here. Uh, and I guess I'll touch a little bit. Nah, you know what? I'll leave that for next episode. So, that's episode 3, where I talked about the sports and entertainment, and it gives you a little feel for what my mindset was. And the change that I made is so dramatic with every different uh, aspect of my life. Everything I once knew, I've given up now because I see what it was for, what it was truly was. And once you see something, you can't unsee it. Once you walk by a piece of trash on the ground, you always know that you walked by that piece of trash. You're never going to not know. You might not actively remember it, but subconsciously, you know. And I hope that I didn't offend anybody. I was trying to keep it a little bit lighter because episode 2 was a little dark. Episode 4 is going to get into some more darkness. And this episode does seem lighter, but it's actually the catalyst for what set up my addiction in the first place. Sports and entertainment, distracting me from God. So while it may seem on the surface easier to talk about and easier to listen to, it had just as much as an effect as any other thing contributed to me and my decision making. They were all influences. And, it is what it is at this point. But if, you can always change yourself. You can heal all those traumas, all those things that we make normal that aren't normal. You can correct that incorrect action at any time for, you know, just because you want to better yourself. All right. Well, that's all I got for episode 3. If anybody wants to get a hold of me and they want to share their story of the goodness overcoming the darkness, maybe you only want your story read off uh, by me, from you emailing me. Hey, I'll do that. I want to share everyone's good stories. That's what this podcast is all about. We want to share the good and show people that no matter what you're going through, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. No matter how much darkness you're in right now, I was most likely further than you. So there's always coming back. God will always open you with open arms. Or did I say open you? God will always welcome you with open arms. So whenever you're ready to turn your life around, you can do it. That's what this podcast is all about. This podcast is about motivating you, the listener, to hear that you're not alone and that the goodness can overcome the darkness in any situation. So if you want to, chat with me, or if you just want to send an email, go ahead and send the email to the Great Chakra Awakening 777 at gmail.com. So that's THE. It's on my screen here if you're watching the video. It's THEGRACHAKRAAWAKENING 777 at gmail.com. It's also going to be on the show notes, and you can find me also on Facebook. I only have my personal page, Todd Armstrong, right now, but my logo is the same as the podcast, The Goodness Over Darkness. You can go ahead and send me a friend request. I don't really post on there right now. I do a lot of posting in the Wrong Warp Facebook group and Soul Space Facebook group. So the Wrong Warp is a podcast that Ketsuban does. He's become a friend, or he's a favorite of mine podcasters. And Soul Space is headed up by Amy Belair, and her podcast is Third Eye Awakening. So there's some good podcasts. There's some good Facebook groups. If you guys want to get involved, or if you want to hear more from me, that's where you can catch me at right now. So I guess that's all I got for today. So thank you for everything. Talk to you guys later.